Hi, I'm Caroline Hartley at Easley Elementary in Durham again, back for First Chapter Fridays. Today I have a scary one. This is Spirit Hunters by Ellen O. It's about a girl named Harper and her family that have just moved into a new house. And as soon as they move into the new house, her brother starts talking about a friend that only he can see. And as time goes on, the story gets creepier and creepier. I was pretty scared reading it myself. Can Harper use her family legacy to stop the hauntings? Well, let's read and find out, and we'll start with the first chapter. Harper, come quick! Harper Rain looked up from unpacking her books to see her 4-year-old brother Michael in the doorway. He could hardly stand still, hopping on one leg and then the other. She wiped the sweat beading on her forehead and fanned herself with the book that she was holding. Little dude, the bathroom's across the hall, Harper said, turning to fill her bookshelves. I don't have to pee. I want you to come see my room. Hurry up, Michael said. He ran in and grabbed her by the hand, trying to pull her over onto her feet. Deliberately making herself heavy, Harper slumped down and placed a little of her weight on his shoulders. All this unpacking and moving is exhausting, she said. Maybe you should carry me on your back. Okay, Harper, I'll help you, he said, his little feet sliding around on the wooden floors. With a loud grunt, her brother pulled harder, hoping to move them as quickly as he could. After a long moment, Harper smothered a smile and relented. She straightened up with a big stretch. Oh, that helped a lot. Thanks, buddy. He grabbed her by the hand again. Let's go. The hallway was even hotter than her room, and Harper cursed their new but ancient house for the millionth time. There was a reason it had been abandoned for over 20 years. It was a wreck. When their parents had decided to relocate to Washington, D.C., they got it because of its Gothic charm. Harper still couldn't figure out the charming part. 1 year of renovations and the house was still not ready, but it had kept their parents from moving the whole family down from New York City in the height of the summer. Michael seemed unaffected by the heat, rushing down towards the other end of the corridor. His room was the first that they had unpacked, so there was no boxes. It was bright and airy, with 3 large windows that faced the front. Everything had been neatly organized and arranged by their mother and father. Harper was bummed that 12 was deemed old enough to unpack her own room. The only thing worse than unpacking was packing in the first place. As she stepped in, she couldn't help but notice how much cooler his room was. Puzzled, she sat on the edge of his bed, discomforted by the unnatural chill. What are you so excited about? She asked, ignoring the creepy crawly sensation that was sending a shiver down her back. Oh, my new friend Billy, he said, pointing to the corner where his large toy chest sat. Harper gazed at the corner, and the hairs on the back of her neck began bristling. There was a sudden distortion in the air, and her vision blurred. And then, nothing. She gave her brother a quizzical look. You can't see him? Michael said, crushed. He turned and stared at the toy chest again, and then nodded. Billy said that you have to be special to see him, he said. I guess you're not special, he said sadly. Her words triggered a sudden memory. Harper was 5 years old and trying to introduce her best friend to her older sister, Kelly. I'm telling Mom, you're making stuff up. I'm not. She's right here. Why won't you believe me? There was a loud humming in her ears, and she could feel the beginnings of a migraine throbbing in her right temple. She took a deep breath and she focused on her brother. But before she could speak, there was a knock at the door, and their mother, Una, appeared. Michael, you can't just leave your toys out in the hallway, she said. Somebody could trip and then hurt themselves on them. In her hands, she held a beat-up, old-fashioned red fire truck. It was completely made of metal, and it looked like an antique. The paint was a dull red, chipped and faded. On one side of the long wagon, it said, City Fire Department in gold paint. There were 2 ladders on either side of the truck, with a pulley and a crank to hoist them up, and a little brass bell that was hanging from in front of the engine. But that's not Michael stopped short. Oh, that's Billy's, said Michael. Who's Billy? Oh, he's my best friend, Michael said. He lives in the house. As a look of puzzled alarm spread over their mother's pretty face, Harper jumped to her feet with an overly loud laugh. We were just playing a game, Harper said. You know, making up stories about people who lived here before. Right, Michael? Harper turned her back to her mother quickly as she faced Michael. She pressed her fingers to her lips, her eyes growing big, as she gestured for him to be quiet. Michael laughed. Harper, you're so funny. Harper grabbed her little brother and swung him onto the bed, tickling him into a fit of giggles. She stole a glance at her mother, noting that her expression had relaxed a little. All right, next time, please be more careful, Una said, as she placed the truck on the nightstand and walked out. Harper heaved a sigh of relief and then collapsed on the bed. Michael climbed on top of her and sat on her stomach. Why didn't you want me to tell Mommy about Billy? He asked. A rising nervousness made Harper's stomach clench as she pictured her mother's look of disappointment. Mom doesn't like things that she doesn't understand, she said. Because she can't see him either? Yeah, Harper said, and from the corner of her eye, she thought she saw movement. She looked around the room in confusion, and her head throbbed. Oh, it's okay, as long as I can see him, Michael said, and he hopped off the bed. Reaching for his Lego box, Michael dumped all of the contents onto his carpet and sat down. Come on, Billy, let's play. Harper was walking over to the door when Michael stopped her. Oh, hey, Harper, wait. Billy said, don't go up into the attic. Why? Michael shrugged. He doesn't want anyone up there. Well, I don't think Mom and Dad planning on touching the attic for a while, Harper said. They're focused on fixing the central air conditioning and then everything else that's wrong with this stupid house. The spotty air conditioning was their first priority. They'd only been in Washington, D.C. for 2 days, and they were already suffering from the heat and humidity. Yet Harper found it very odd that the old house was strangely cold in certain spots, like in Michael's room. Michael stopped playing with his Lego toys, and he looked up at Harper with a very serious expression. Billy doesn't like it when you call his house stupid, he said. Well, it's not his house, it's our house, she retorted. No, Harper, this is Billy's house. He's one of the people who lived here before us. The cold in the room deepened, causing goosebumps to spread all over her arms and back. Harper fumbled for the doorknob. She was suddenly desperate to get away. Back in her room, Harper felt warm and clammy, as if she had been running a fever. She welcomed the heat that she had been cursing only a few moments earlier. At least it was normal. Her head still pounded, and she knew that if she didn't take something, the migraine would soon overwhelm her. She rifled through her bag and pulled out the little pill box that her mom refilled every day. All of the other medicines in the house were kept locked in the medicine cabinet. After swallowing some ibuprofen, Harper continued unpacking. While sorting her books onto her shelves, she came upon a small photo album. Her mother had given it to her as a memory book when they were going to leave New York. Harper had barely glanced through it before, but now she sat down on her unmade bed and she flipped it open. Each photo was methodically labeled with the date and Harper's age. It was typical of her mother, who was a corporate lawyer and notorious for her meticulousness. There were a few baby pictures, which Harper paged through. She smiled at seeing her 2-year-old self eating spaghetti for the first time, and then a photo of her at 4 underneath the T-Rex exhibit at the Museum of Natural History. She was making a scary face at Kelly, her older sister, who stood there looking bored. Seeing those early pictures again, she felt like she was looking at a finished jigsaw puzzle that had one obvious missing piece. No matter how you stared at it, you couldn't help but be aware of the gaping hole in the middle. But the trouble is, Harper couldn't put her finger on what this missing piece was. And that wasn't all. Nothing had been the same since the accident. She didn't feel like herself anymore. Harper turned the pages, trying to ignore her aching head. The more she thought about her missing memories, the worse she felt. All that she knew were facts, the ones that her parents had relayed to her. Last fall, there was a fire at school. She was hospitalized and had a terrible accident, but she had no recollection of what had happened to her. In the photo book, she found a picture of herself lying in the hospital bed with 2 arm casts. Kelly was holding a cake in front of her, which Michael was trying to eat with his entire face. It was her 12th birthday, Halloween. In her picture, she was smiling, but her eyes looked haunted. Harper absently rubbed both of her forearms. The casts had been removed 6 months ago, and the doctors warned her of phantom pains in her injured areas. But she didn't have pain as much as the odd sensation that the casts were still on her arms. 2 badly fractured arms, a broken collarbone, several broken ribs, and no memory. Whatever had happened, Harper figured that it must have been so bad that her mind repressed the memories. Did she really want to remember them now? To find out what happens next, come to the library and check out Spirit Hunters by Ellen